But yeah, so today we'll be doing our last webinars in the series, the Toolkit for relationship success. Today, I hope to go over some communication skills and other types of things that you can be doing and implementing within your relationship to just build the relationship. And then we'll move into fanning the flames, which is just how to build romance and relationships. And then the last part of today, we'll go into resources that you can find, whether it's on the internet or on more Lubbock local resources or on the App Store that can help support couples therapy and couples wellness and health.
Awesome.
So we don't have to do the pre-writing activity since we don't have anybody here, but if anybody watching this later, I like to do pre-writing activities so that way you have questions in the middle of the presentation, but we will skip that. Okay, so building skills. I always tell people in couples therapy, this is one of the first things that I will teach them. And it's funny, I love this little analogy. So I tell them to think about being a baby whenever they're approaching couples conflict, couples communication, all that good stuff. And by that, I mean, are you being this type of baby? This is the what is this baby? Very curious, very cute. My picture is very grainy, but eyes wide, really trying to understand whatever's in front of them, has maybe never seen it before. This is the kind of baby that we need to be coming into these situations with our partners with, is the what is this baby? But usually when couples are coming to see me, they are the what the hell is this type of baby? Inconsolable, already is not going to be happy with anything that you say, and it's just going to take time to cool that baby off. It will not try to understand what's in front of it if it has determined that it will be in what the hell is this mode. And really how this applies to the couple relationship is, I think more often than not, and very guilty of this myself, we come to our partners already upset about something, already trying to prove that, you know, we're upset. We need to make them know that we are upset, and we come in and like guns blazing. What the hell is this? What are you doing? Like, you are wrong. Why did you do this? And not in a actually trying to understand and figure out what's going on, or maybe what might be going on in your partner's life that they were doing that type of way. So this is where I like to start with couples, and especially when they're in the what the hell is this mode. How do we get out of that and more into help me understand why you did this thing that hurt me, versus really jumping to you hurt me, you meant to hurt me, you're vindictive, because that just hurts for everybody.
I love that. I got to jump in and say I love that analogy.
Yeah.
I feel like it just applies pretty much to everything.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I love that. I hadn't heard it before.
Yeah, it's my favorite. I mean, with friends, if we're going in and we're already upset, and you know, we're going into something and our goal is to only tell people we are upset, that's what is going to come out of it. My family used to have horses, and when I was learning to ride a horse at a very young age, I was obviously nervous. And my grandpa said the number one rule of riding horses is look where you want the horse to go. If you want the horse to go straight and you don't want to fall off, look between its ears. If you look down at the ground because you're so scared of falling off, that's where you're going to go and you're going to fall off. So if you enter a conversation and what the hell is this baby mode, that is how the conversation will also end.
Indeed.
So when we are approaching conflict, obviously let's pick the what is this mode, not what the hell is this mentality. If you already can feel yourself going into a situation like that, which I mean, I'm very guilty of. Sometimes I've had a really bad day and I text my husband right before I come home, or maybe on my way home, because sometimes, you know, you text and drive, you're not supposed to. But maybe he forgot to do something that was really important that he got done. And already I just have had this really long day, and my first instinct would be to barrel through the door. I cannot believe that I asked you to do one thing today, and that's not fair. Like, that's not going to lead to a good exchange. That's a very, very harsh way to start a conversation, and it's not going to be receptive. Nobody wants to respond well to a person who walks through the door and says those things. I know I don't. Mm-hmm. And so trying to take some breaths before you get out of the car in the garage, or maybe drive around the neighborhood one more time and just try to say, well, maybe they had a busy day. Let me go in there and ask some questions about their day. And if, you know, I'm still not understanding, explicitly ask them, like, hey, I asked you to do this one thing. Help me understand why you didn't get that done. That's going to go a lot better. And that's what we call a soft startup, trying to understand something versus trying to make someone know your point of view. And then, of course, using I language. When we start using, you did this, you stopped this, you didn't do this, as soon as somebody hears you, they're now going to start internalizing. They are not going to hear the following words that you say. They're going to start making their case in their head, thinking about, what's going to exonerate them, the defense that they can come up with, because now you are, saying that they are guilty. You are the prosecution in a court case because you are telling them what they did or didn't do. And of course, they're going to try to do some self-preservation tactics, because I don't think any human being in the world wants to be wrong and horrible and make mistakes. I think we quite frankly want to be the opposite. So when you're using I language about something, which I'll give an example in a second, you are taking ownership of what's going on for you and not telling your partner they're deficient or broken or wrong in some type of way. And then we're going to move into accepting influence. This is arguably very, very hard whenever we're in couples conflict, but the goal is to get rid of the right way to do things. There is no right way to do things. You are both individual people who have lived individual lives and had your own experiences, so you're going to have different opinions on what the right way to go about something is. And the goal of conflict resolution is not to come up with the right way to do things. It's, hey, can we talk through both of our ways of doing things and figure out a compromise in which we are using both of the strengths that we have? Because maybe one person in the relationship is really, really high in emotional intelligence, can really relate and nurture and think about how things might affect other people, while maybe someone else is really high in rational logic in the relationship and, very cut and dry, don't let people cross my boundaries. Neither of those things are bad things, and partners like both of those are needed in relationships. So both of those types of people would have their strengths and both of them would have their weaknesses. So we build upon each other's strengths instead of having one right way. And then we are practicing timeouts and repairing when conflict happens and we hurt each other's feelings. And what I mean by timeouts is not, oh, we got super, super heated and just to a point of no return and we just agreed we'll talk about it later. That is not going to be productive. You will not talk about it later. And if you do, it's going to be, we're talking about it because we're conflicting about it later too. If you want to take a timeout, it actually has a lot of benefits. There's a lot of statistics that show that negotiated timeouts are helpful, but only in this specific structure. So if you are feeling what's called emotionally flooded, and that happens usually if your heart is normal, you don't have any heart issues going on. When your heart is approaching and exceeding 100 beats per minute, it is more likely that you will become emotionally flooded, which is seeing red, right? And the reason for that is these emotional centers in our brain, the fight or flight responses are triggered, and those are in a very old part of our brain, evolutionarily speaking, the limbic structure, the midbrain structures, the amygdala, and they are a lot better at megaphoning and taking over the brain to help us survive through danger. And then our more rational part of ourselves, who can think through things and not think there's a dinosaur chasing after us, quite frankly, is this front part of our brain, our prefrontal cortex, and it is much, much newer. So I call this old part, fight or flight part, caveman brain. It really just doesn't want to get eaten by a dinosaur. This is our can drive a car and follow laws and rules and make laws and rules part of our brain. And the caveman brain is much, much better at driving the car of our brain. They're much better at taking control and getting us out of a dangerous situation. So that's when you call it, when you're seeing red or emotionally flooded. But the number one rule is you can only call it if you are feeling that way. If your partner comes in and you see him huffing and puffing and you know the signs of what emotionally flooded might look like on your partner, they're saying nonsense and you know that that's where they're at, you do not call it for them. That will in no way, shape, or form ever go well. Just imagine somebody telling you, I think that you need to go take a break. If somebody is emotionally flooded and that's the response, that's not going to go well. And quite frankly, it's not your job to have to regulate somebody else's emotions. They need to learn what those warning signs are for themselves and learn how to regulate themselves and call timeouts for themselves. That's called self-soothing and just being aware of your own body and your own experience in the moment. And so number one rule, only call it for yourself. Never call it for another person. So if I was going into a conversation with my husband, I either see my Apple Watch bing or I just can tell I'm starting to see red, I'm going to say, hey, I'm feeling very overwhelmed right now, or I'm flooded right now, and I need to call a timeout. And the timeout is not when we talk about it next, not tomorrow, not the next morning. It is 20 minutes. You immediately set your phone timer for 20 minutes. No more, no less. Research says 20 minutes exactly. And in those 20 minutes, you get away from each other and you have 3 tasks. First and foremost, deep breathing or getting a snack, or maybe it's jumping in the shower, anything to help get you calmed down. Something that's going to lower your heart rate, not have your body in that fight or flight response, any type of grounding skill or mindfulness skill. That's first and foremost the goal, because if you re-enter that conversation still elevated, it's going to go the same way no matter what. But then after you calm yourself down, the next 2 things you're going to do is first, you're going to think about what your partner might be going through, what's going on for them, or what patterns you usually know happen for them that they react in the way that they reacted during the conversation. Think about, what previous experiences in their life might be informing the way that they're reacting and the things that they're saying or their viewpoint. And from all of that, what do you think, if your partner was right in front of you, what do you think they need because of their reaction or their opinion? Do they need a hug? Like, do they need someone to, validate them? And then once you think of all those things for your partner, you think of all the same things, but for yourself. What are you feeling? Like, what previous experiences might be coming up for you, might be triggered for you right now, that might be impacting the way you react? Maybe it's not your partner's fault you reacted this way. Maybe it's a really toxic ex-partner that you're just being reminded of the times in which he was toxic or she was toxic with you. And now you're triggered and you're reacting to your partner as if you were reacting in those instances. And that's not really what you mean to do. Maybe it's something completely different, but you just think about what's going on for you. And so what do you need from your partner? Because that's what's going on for you, or these are the reactions that you're having. So that's a negotiated timeout, very structured. Those are all of the steps. And then you try to, I tell people before they even ever have to call one, make a mutual meeting spot that they come back to, so that way there's no questions about it. That's obviously an optional step, but if your meeting spot is the kitchen table, then when the 20 minutes are up, even if you're not done with all the steps, if you've at least gotten to the calm down point, then you re-engage. And you can call this as many times. If you re-engage and try to continue the conversation for 5 minutes and you start to notice yourself get flooded again, call it again, over and over and over. The goal is at the beginning of implementing these things, it might be a couple times per argument, but then maybe after a week or 2 of doing this, maybe you're only calling it once or twice. And then maybe after 6 weeks of doing this, at maximum, you're calling it once a week, and you're able to do this self-soothing and thinking about all of these other perspectives in the moment, and maybe not even needing to call them most of the time. And that's the goal. And this is just practicing trying to do that more naturally, because it's not natural for us to do that. What's natural for us is to survive and protect ourselves. But we don't have dinosaurs chasing us anymore. So we've got to train our brain to not go there as quickly, especially if we've had previous experiences of trauma. And then lastly, turning inwards. Remember, our partners are supposed to be there to help us, to collaborate with us. Kind of going back to, there's no right way of doing things. We've all come from different places, and we really need to accept that there are multiple realities. And instead of trying to go on opposite sides of the football field and try to fight each other in a fencing match, we can work together and use teamwork, use collaboration of our strengths to be able to find a solution. Okay, so here's some examples. So maybe you are a female, and this is just stereotypical example, and you're ordering Amazon packages because you got to have cleaning supplies or getting Christmas gifts or whatever it might be. Especially the Christmas season, I feel like that was a common complaint. I have to order things, and my husband was upset anytime a package would come to the door, and this is what was said: I can't even keep track of all the money you're spending. I don't know who would really respond well to this. Maybe like Kylie Jenner, I don't know. But if I'm husband in this situation, it's not the fact that they're spending money that maybe you're upset in the moment. It's because you're feeling anxious. So you need to take ownership of that anxiety. And this is the formula that I tell people: is you say, I feel, and then put a blank, about what's going on, not like an evidence of you did this and this and this, just about a specific situation, only a few words, half a sentence, max a sentence. I need something actionable, something specific that either you or your partner can do to at least get you a little bit closer to not feeling that negative feeling. So if I was the male partner in this case, instead of saying that I can't keep track of all the money that you're spending, I feel anxious about our current financial situation. So I need us to discuss a budget together and maybe come up with ways we can keep ourselves accountable. Because they're not upset at the money spent. They're upset because the money that is being spent, the packages that are coming in, it's not clear what's going on. And so there's anxiety about whether or not we're staying within our current financial station or status, right? And so that's why they're getting upset. But that's not what would have tracked in that first way of saying it, huh?
No, that's so funny. And but what if you and I will say we did have Roxana join us, so we do have one person
Oh,
on with
nice.
us today. What if the person saying that it's a little bit more about control? Like, what if
Mm-hmm.
it's and I guess that could be traced back to anxiety too, right? Like controlling the
Mm-hmm.
person so that you. So I guess I just answered my own question, kind of. But one is a little
I'm
bit
happy.
less yeah, one's a little less, I don't know, complex than the controlling one, right? Which is a little
Mm-hmm.
bit more I would think that would be a little bit harder to deal with a person that's trying to control the other one
Yeah,
constantly.
absolutely. And especially, and I feel like a lot of people, it's very common nowadays, and it hurts my heart a little bit when I see it. But it's on social media. It seems like every single woman who is in not the best relationship is saying that they're in a relationship with a narcissistic person who is so abusive. And now I don't
Yeah,
think that that is not the case. There is definitely evidence of that, but it's actually really, really hard to get a narcissistic personality disorder diagnosis. It's actually extremely difficult, and the prevalence rates for that are actually really low.
yeah,
But whenever somebody who, especially as a male, has no idea how to speak in this way, absolutely it starts to become controlling. So if I was a clinician in that case, hopefully, clinicians are doing comprehensive IPV assessment and being able to see even beforehand if any of these types of verbal abuse are going on, because that more controlling piece, the criticism, that's verbal abuse. I mean, there's no
yeah,
qualification or diagnostic criteria. That is what it is, right? But I think that a lot of people don't know that's what they're doing in the moment. So if it's for control, I would say, let the therapist try to initiate, get that neutral third party that's not going to have any repercussions when you potentially could if it is a controlling abusive situation, and let them try to teach them this different type of format and this different type of empathic communication, direct communication. And then at the end of the day, if the person is unwilling to try those skills and they continue to do that controlling verbiage, if they continue to do all of those abusive things, then that's a major red flag. And we need to start looking at maybe some escape plans, safety planning for those situations, and getting out of that toxic situation, because that can be a really, really bad situation. And I don't think anybody deserves to be subject to that type of treatment.
sure. Do you see a lot when I'm thinking of one person in particular that I used to know. And I think that their attempts at control it certainly wasn't like IPV, but I think that it
Yeah.
stemmed from a place of like really deep insecurity. And
Mm-hmm.
so it was less I mean, it was probably anxious, but it was fear,
Mm-hmm.
fear of losing that person and fear of, and so they
Mm-hmm.
had these really maladaptive ways of, trying to not lose that person. So, anyway.
And honestly, in this line of work, as a therapist or any counselor, I mean, you can't. It's really going to be hard for you to stay in that job for a very long time if you just believe in like this pure evil, right? Like some people are just
Yeah,
evil. You have to come to an understanding of the world that every maladaptive thing, every harmful, hurtful thing that's one human does to another human is coming from a place of vulnerability, of hurt, or else it'll eat you alive and drive you crazy. So
sure.
even in a intimate partner terrorism situation, I try to say, okay, hopefully there's just not pure evil in their heart. They have just been so deeply wounded. Or in the case of narcissistic personality disorder, they must have had maybe a lot of family of origin abuse or neglect or inferiority, that was something that maybe just couldn't be worked through, and maybe they're not willing to work through or acknowledge that right now. And I have to give like sympathy to that. I have to say, well, okay, they're hurting really bad, but then also knowing, even though they're hurting really bad, that is not my responsibility. Like that is something like they have to acknowledge it. They have to get help for it, or else it's not going to change, you know?
Right. You don't want the victim of it to stay in it because they feel so sorry for them, right? That's tricky.
Right.
That's tricky.
Exactly. It's walking a fine line. But I just feel like nowadays I see in most intimate partner violence is not intimate partner terrorism. I almost said domestic violence terrorism. Most IPV is not intimate partner terrorism. Most is situational IPV. And in situational IPV, it is actually extremely more common that IPV is going bi-directional, that both partners are engaging in it in some way, shape, or form. And in what I usually see is both partners are actually engaging in this verbal abuse, this criticism, the blaming, the joking, or verbal abuse disguised as jokes. And it's going both ways. And people aren't realizing it because nobody has said, hey, here's a list of what verbal abuse is, and that's what's going on right now. And then they're like, oh my gosh, I do this all the time.
Yeah. It's like
I
a
mean, we know
gerbil
our
on the
typical
wheel.
you can't do that,
Yeah.
but some of these smaller things, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, I didn't mean to
Oh, it's
distract
okay.
you.
It's totally fine. It's totally fine. I like talking about it. I don't like when I'm talking about it in the clinical sense, because then that means somebody's being subject to abuse. But I like talking about it in a research sense because that's my research interest.
Yeah. Hypothetically.
Hypothetically, hopefully this never happens. But here's another example that I think I hear a lot more from females of, you don't take me on dates anymore, you don't touch me anymore, or we're not romantic anymore. And this is where, you know, you also have to develop sympathy with a client, if you're the clinician, who is different in gender than you, if you're a female clinician especially, because you're probably really relating to that on some way, shape, or form. Maybe your partner isn't, you know, giving you as much romance or physical touch. I feel like that's just really something common that I've heard a lot of AFAB cis het women say right now is, there's no romance, you don't take me on dates, you don't even touch me anymore. And what I say is, you know, if you were working all day and you came in and you had a dinner, and the very first real conversation that you're having outside of work in the day is, you don't take me on dates, you don't touch me anymore, are you going to want to engage in that conversation? Not saying it doesn't need to be talked about, but if that's the words that are heard, I would feel really defeated. I'd be like, oh, here's another thing wrong in my life. And I have before, when things similar to that have been said. Those people are still human. And so bringing it up in that manner, it's not going to get you anywhere. Usually people start to become hopeless when that's over and over again, and internalize that as, I'm not good enough for this person, I can't give them what they need, when that's not true. But it's not setting anybody up for success when it's worded like that. So instead, maybe this partner would be able to say something like, I feel maybe misunderstood. If I know love languages are really big, which I think it's a fun little activity. The research behind it isn't all there as how much, you know, people are putting weight into it, but they're a fun couple activity. But just know that your love languages aren't your only language. Like if you're a physical touch person, you cannot be a physical touch person in 2 weeks for the next 6 months. So just because you test that way one day doesn't mean you're like that the whole time, but they can be fun. And so maybe you are more physical touch. And so you can say, I feel misunderstood about how you can make me feel loved. And so what I just really need from you right now is a hug. I need you to take the initiative and plan a date. Whatever it is, you are giving someone, instead of, hey, you're not enough, hey, can you please do this? And that is so much easier. After a long day, I like to just be told, hey, we need to do this and this and this. I'm like, okay, I don't have to like make decisions. I don't have to feel bad for it. Like, I need to give my spouse a hug and maybe plan a date on Friday. And now if that person's not receptive to that, I would start looking into the why, trying to understand, are they depressed? Are they dissociative? Are they going through really debilitating anxiety? What might be going on for them that it's hard for them to give that? Maybe it's just a background personal preference thing. But that's when you start deciding, is after you give actionable, specific, can you please do this to make me feel a little bit better? And if there is a no to that, that really clear, I need this from you. It's okay to express needs, right? It's okay to be needy. And if someone's not willing to step up to those needs, maybe it's not a good fit.
I was I was reading this book called Divorce Festers, because when I went over solution focused brief therapy, I was reading about the person who read that. So anyway, in that book, it was interesting because they had an example that's kind of like this, and they'd been married a really long time, and the woman, I guess what she was doing, it was coming across as nagging. Right. It was coming across. And so that pushed the person further away. And so the example was having her just try a whole new approach, and not in a way where you're like, well, screw this. I'm not even going to try anymore. It was more just like, hey, since this isn't working, then I'm going to just start, putting time into myself. And when she did start doing that, but not in a hateful way of distancing and whatever, then he came around because she gave him the space, I guess, that he needed to then re-engage. It's just really interesting.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I see that a lot, that it's either maybe we do need to take, so the type of therapy that I practice, or at least conceptualize most of my cases, I think honestly a little bit more eclectic, and take and pick what I want from all of the good stuff of all the models, and just don't use what I don't feel works in the others. But the one that is at least where I conceptualize cases is called symbolic experiential, and the whole goal is to just balance belonging and individuation. And that's what health is. Health isn't being able to say certain things, or a family looking a certain way, or being able to do certain things. If a family can get through problems in time, because there's not an absence of problem, but they can balance being an individual and having their own individual identity outside of relationships in the family or friendships, whatever. They have their own individual hobbies, identity, needs, wants, stuff like that, but also balance belonging. So being a part of the relationship, being a part of the family, or being a part of friendships, then that's the whole goal. And balance doesn't mean 50-50, but that it feels good for you. And so sometimes it is a communication thing. We just need to say things differently, because we are really making our partner feel down in the dumps, that they can't do anything right in the relationship. And once you get there, people don't want to respond. Sometimes it is a love language thing, and just having a conversation about, like, really being clear, this is what I need. Sometimes it is more like, what we were just talking about, and you just have to switch approaches, and it's going to depend case to case. But I think that sometimes people try that one thing, and they're like, oh, that didn't work. And they give up, and they start to, cut off from the relationship, when it doesn't need to be that way. It's just, relationship fixes are not one size fits all, and they are not overnight. Sometimes it takes 2.5 years of therapy to actually get through an issue. It just depends on the people, and that is a long time. I don't see many people that long.
That
Like,
is a long time.
but sometimes it is, and if you're gonna pick that person, sometimes that is worth it. Usually I see people weekly, maybe like a couple months, and then they'll go less frequency. But I've heard of people every single week for 2.5, 3 years before they find the thing that works for them.
Wow.
There's always something that's gonna work. It's just
At
sometimes
least
hard
they
to
hung
find.
in there,
Right? That's real
commitment.
commitment. Absolutely. Something else that can be helpful is utilizing empathic communication. I think that this one can be really hard if you haven't mastered those self-soothing skills, because I'm a human being, and I just know that it's difficult when you're just really angry to speak in a really calm, soothing, validating, accepting type of way. So if we haven't mastered how to use the negotiated timeout and seamlessly blend that, it's gonna be very hard to empathically communicate. But if you got it down, I'm impressed, and please come talk to me, because I want to know how you conquered one without the empathic communication. without being able to self-soothe, because I've never seen it before. I'll do some research on you, because that's pretty awesome. But with empathic communication, so we have empathy and we have sympathy. I think that a lot of people, I mean, not because of, intelligence, but just because I think they're used interchangeably, empathy and sympathy. Our goal is to not be sympathetic to our partners, because we don't want to feel sorry for them, because when we feel sorry for them, we're not feeling with them. And the whole goal of a couple romantic relationship is to be partners and be able to support each other, and really be in the moment with that person, be present with that person. We do that through empathy. Empathy is getting down on that level. You don't have to personally feel it for yourself and the things going on in your life, but being able to connect to that thing. I think that's another big misconception, is whenever, I usually see this in males, like if a female is expressing something, they're traditionally the more emotionally communicative, intelligent person in the relationship. And the male's like, I just don't understand why she felt overwhelmed about this. Like, that doesn't make sense to me. That's a very common dynamic that I see. And I tell the guy, you don't have to connect the A to B to C in your head. It doesn't have to make sense content-wise, rationally in your head. If she says, I'm feeling overwhelmed, yes, listen to her. Don't act like you're tuning out, but you don't have to actually know what it's like to be overwhelmed in the specific situation that she's saying. It doesn't have to make sense. What I tell people in that instance is, when they say that feeling, I'm feeling blank, and maybe it's overwhelmed, I want you to go back and think about the very last time you felt overwhelmed. Was it yesterday? Was it during work that day? Was it 6 years ago? Whenever it was, think about the last time you felt that feeling for yourself in your life. Think about what was going on, like if someone, was doing something and it was a reaction to a specific person, who was that? And really try to remember what it felt like in that moment to feel that emotion. And once you're there, think about what you wanted someone to do to comfort you in that moment. And then that's what you're connecting to. That's whenever you're being empathetic. It's not understanding. It's not even agreeing. Those are not requirements for being empathetic. Being empathetic is, can I remember a time I felt the same emotion? And if I can, then can I just sit and really just remember that with that person, listen to their needs, remember what I needed, and just sit there. You don't have to solve it, if that makes sense. But for empathic communication, if you like a little acronym or some steps, I always tell people to inquire. We first need to, be in the what is this baby mode. And then we accept what that person has told us. So maybe it is a husband coming to a wife, hey, I notice your behavior is a little off. Can you tell me, what's on your heart, or what's going on, or what may have happened today? And then when they say what happened, if it's like, oh, well, this and this and this happened at work, and it's just making me feel overwhelmed, not saying, oh, but that doesn't sound right. That's not accepting that. You accept whatever they tell you at face value. That's what's going on for them. You don't have to agree with it. You don't have to understand it. You just accept it. You say, oh, okay, so you're feeling overwhelmed. That makes sense given your behavior. Then you validate. And I just wanted to let you know it's okay to feel overwhelmed. I know that I've felt overwhelmed plenty of times in this relationship, and I don't usually show it the best. And I know when I'm feeling overwhelmed, it's like the walls are crumbling in. So you can inquire again in this comfort stage of, what does it feel like for you? How can I help you? And then you switch persons. And then avoiding the you statements here, using those I statements, trying not to blame or criticize, or just go in there wanting to hurt the other person. Obviously, I don't think that is ever going to go well. And then when we do have a bad fight and we're having conflict and we hurt each other's feelings in a fight, afterwards, once we do calm down, we really need to come back together and have a heart-to-heart sometime in the near future and talk about some of the differences in realities, differences in triggers, differences in responsibilities, and come up with a really good plan as to, in future conversations, how are we going to avoid being triggered by each other, avoid calling each other names or using criticism or getting to that place that's really unhealthy, and what are some of the things that we are going to plan to implement, maybe negotiated timeouts or peppermint oil. That can be really great. I had a couple one time. Anytime they started fighting, they would put peppermint oil under their nose and it would help them stay a little bit more calm.
Really?
Uh-huh.
That's so weird. I love it. But
It was just, they'd smell it and it was cold and they were like, okay, I just remember I need to breathe between every every few things. So fixes aren't sometimes this huge, big academic research thing.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just you tried something random and that's what worked.
Yeah.
And honestly, I do think so. If you look up emotion wheel on the internet, I think my next slide is an emotion wheel. It's in the like 2 or 3 slides ahead. But if you look up emotion wheel, especially, I feel like I recommend this a lot with men because it is hard when we're going through something. I teach my kids, it's called scribble spot. It's like all of these different colors of emotions are scribbled inside of our head. And it's really hard to identify that one thing that's going on. And that doesn't mean you're bad or horrible. Like, you are a human. Like, it is okay. But looking up an emotion wheel, having all of these possibilities, when you are in that spot, you can just point. You can just be like, that's what it is. That's what it is. And it's just so much easier than having to sort through all of that when you're feeling it in the moment and overwhelmed and just can't sort through it and getting it wrong, in quotes, and all of that business. When you see it, you can point, okay, no, actually it's that. And your partner knows, and there's nothing wrong with that, you know? That is what I tell people, especially when they're learning how to do this. My husband is a victim of this mentality. He was really bad at expressing feelings for a little phase. And so I just pulled out the iPad. I said, pick one. Tell me what's going on. Just pick one. Way easier for him whenever there's just a lot of things going on and swirling, and there's no shame in it. Let's see. I think I got, 1 or 2 examples for this one. But if, like I said, if you're a husband, what's on your heart, that accept and validate stage, after they tell you what's going on or why they're acting differently, then you say, I really care that you feel whatever their blank was. I really care that you feel overwhelmed, and I want to help with that. And I want to show you that I care about that. I felt that before. It was horrible, whatever. And then your comfort is you tell them again, maybe I'm going to be there for you. Like, I want you to know that I hear that you're anxious about something, and I just want you to know I'm going to do everything in my power. Or maybe it's a commitment of, I don't want you to feel this way anymore. Is there something I can add? Okay, I promise every time you come home, I'm going to do this specific thing. Or maybe it's just a hug, or maybe it's just sitting on the closet floor, eating ice cream together in silence. Like, that's okay too. It doesn't have to be this magical, in-depth, healing verbal exchange. It can just be sitting and being present with each other or looking at each other. I tell people a lot that we don't stop and just look at each other and sit in an emotion. If you guys are getting in really little fights here and there about picking at each other, and they're really small and superficial, why don't you go through this stage, and whenever you guys are talking about, like, I'm really feeling this about the relationship, 45 seconds to a minute, look at each other after somebody expresses a feeling before you continue. And sometimes and I'll make people do this in session. It's my favorite thing. Because I'll be like, you're not even looking at each other, you're hearing each other, but you are not being present in this moment. And when you make them slow that down and say, I'm really just feeling anxious, stare. 45 seconds to a minute go by, and you start to see them like all of these defenses fall. I've had people after the 30-second mark just start sobbing with each other because there's so much pent up. We're not being with each other in emotion. We've forgotten how to do that. We've forgotten how to open our hearts to each other and not have to have a solution or understand, just be there with an emotion. And so sometimes that can just be really powerful.
Love that.
And here's that emotion wheel. I know when I had a long day at work, I'd rather I'm feeling infuriated or exasperated or just, all those things. It's right in front of you, more than an A, B, C, D. This has got a million different answers, but a lot easier than pulling that from the back of your head when you're feeling that overwhelmed, things are spiraling, and there's no shame in it. Okay, I think we are at our fanning the flames, and skipped a little bit. So I think, and I think I actually note this on the second slide a little bit, but something that I try to get couples away from is this idea of what romance was at the beginning of the relationship. It's never, ever, ever going to be like the honeymoon stage, and maybe you'll get bits and pieces of it, and that's fantastic. But that romance at the honeymoon stage, or the romance that are in romance novels, those were traditionally written for women, not written for the real world, right? In Disney movies too. Sometimes it's not all like that. And actually most of the time it's not like a Disney movie or a romance novel. But maybe it did kind of feel like that at the beginning of the relationship. And so we have this idea that romance is lust or romance is mind reading our needs. And that's so not true. And so I think it's really easy for a lot of people to say, oh, well, this person doesn't do this without asking anymore. And yes, maybe that was nice at the beginning of the relationship. There's also a lot of power if people stop and think of someone, you saying, I would really like it if you did this, and someone saying, okay, I will do this even though I don't want to do this, or I wouldn't have done this otherwise. Like someone is literally hearing a need of yours and fulfilling that, going out of their way to fulfill that when they weren't thinking about it. They weren't being bothered by it. They weren't wanting to do that. And you can look at that as they didn't want to spend time with me or they didn't want to do this for me. Absolutely you can, but that's not going to feel good. Or you can look at it as, wow, my partner cares and loves and chooses me so much that they didn't want to go on a walk because they hate going on walks. But they saw that that's something I really wanted to do, and they still did that for me. So sometimes just a little mind frame change can be helpful, and knowing that romance isn't lust after the beginning stages. There will be lustful times every once in a while, but romance is in a long marriage, in a long, healthy, successful marriage, romance is friendship, and romance is understanding each other's inner worlds and what's going on in your lives, and just being intimate past lust, if that makes sense. And some of the
How do
ways that
you
you can go ahead.
So sorry. I'm
You're
just
good.
wondering, 'cause you hear it all the time. You hear it all the time about how people are lamenting that they don't have that initial, spark or what have you. But in the beginning, it's so novel, right? That
Mhm.
it's everything's new and you're exploring, but it's not
Yeah.
like that. But then you have women who are like sexual camels lots of the time, and you can go forever without it, but you have a man
Yeah.
maybe who's a lot very different from that. How do you
Mhm.
negotiate that with the couple? Like, because I think that leads to so many problems,
Yeah. Well, and like, in the beginning of the relationship, we are trying to get to know each other, right? And we're trying to build all of these new knowledge bases about this other person faster than any other point in a relationship.
Mhm.
If, you were 20 years in and you were still building at the same pace, more knowledge about your partner, maybe you would still be in a very lustful, romantic, novel
Yeah.
romance type stage. But the fact of the matter is we start to know this person more and more and more. Once we get to a certain level, we start to back off asking them, being their friend, getting to know them, and it becomes comfortable. And when we let off the gas of, having conversations like we did at the beginning of the relationship, trying to get to know somebody's inner world, then we start letting off the gas of romance and all of those other things. And it becomes comfortable. And it's hard to want to be all over someone when you're not getting to know that person still.
Yeah.
But the way I negotiate in a couple, maybe to answer your question a little bit better, is we're not having out loud conversations about this. And sometimes, when this is happening outside of therapy or before someone comes into therapy, I see people, it's more of like a blaming thing, or if we are having these conversations, they might be one sided. We need to sit down and say, not because you're doing something bad, not because you're horrible and not giving me what I need anymore. That goes back to those harsh startups. We say, what do we want the rules to be about this? And I think that, this is where the Disney stuff maybe plays in, maybe that romance stuff. People think it's bad to schedule a weekly date. Like every Friday's at this time, it's on both of our calendars blocked off. Nobody can schedule appointments at our works or whatever. Or we're scheduling time to be intimate, to scheduling time to have sex, or scheduling time to cuddle. Like some people are just, that's blasphemous. Like I cannot believe that you do that. Why not? Why? I mean, I put important things on my schedule. I put things that I can't not show up to on my schedule. Why can't your partner be that thing you can't show up to? And I understand spontaneity is definitely fun and it is needed in a relationship, but if you can't put your partner on a schedule, then it's going to be really hard to want to be spontaneous with that person. So that's just another perspective that I give them is we need to have that conversation about the rules. We need to say, okay, this is your need. Where are we putting it in the week? Right here. we're putting it on the calendar so that way you get your need met. You're so important, in not in like a condescending way, that you're so important, partner A, that you deserve to have that hour block, 2 hour block, or whatever it's going to be on the calendar, because you matter in this relationship, or and vice versa with the other partner and their stuff. But being able to say out loud these things, we are often not saying them. Or maybe the male partner wants to go play video games or go out with the guys, and the female partner's like, seriously, like I wanted to do this tonight. And she says, well, do whatever you want. This happened to me yesterday, which is why I'm bringing this one up. And I was like, if you didn't want him to go out with his friends, why did you say do whatever you want? Why would you say?
Because she didn't really mean that. That was a double.
I totally understand it. I'm totally guilty of it as well. But if you don't want your partner to go play that video game, to go out with the girls or go out with the guys or whatever it is, you have to say it. And if you, and she was like, well, if he had stayed, I would have just known that he would have rather gone to be with a friend. And I'm like, yes, he asked you if he could go be with a friend because whatever the reason was for him, because he's human and he had a want. Like, we all don't want to do every single thing that we schedule when it comes down to it. And he still respected you enough to bring it up to you. And you did not say exactly what you were needing in that situation. But if you had, and he had picked you, like I said earlier, change the frame. Like, he really wanted to go hang out with this friend that he hasn't seen in months. But you said a word, you made a command, and your wish is my command. He was your loyal servant, or the court, whatever it is. You were the queen. You just had to say the word, and he met the need, or whatever it is. And obviously there are instances where people will say it and somebody doesn't follow through with it. But we just keep so much in, and we expect so much mind reading, and that's exhausting on both ends. Like, you're setting yourself up for like getting disappointed, and I don't understand that. We make Christmas lists to Santa. We teach our kids to do that. We need to make Christmas lists to our partner throughout the year.
Yeah, for sure.
It's so important. And I tell people that, I'm like, the more that you can tell your partner straight up something specific for them to do, the easier it is going to be for them to meet your needs and your expectations. And then if they won't feel spicy and do anything extra, the relationship is above and beyond, And so, and the way you just figure these out is just having conversations and trying to be in what is this mode,
Yeah. That's probably true. Like you said, people are so used. I don't know where that came from, because I'm guilty of that too. Just wanting the other person to know you well enough to know without having to bumble around with it. But I don't know where that want came from, but it's pretty common. And you know, I think people stop talking about it because their conversation skills are inappropriate, right? They're saying things in a way that's not getting them what they want. And so then they just stop talking. They're like, well, this is not working, so I'm just going to stop talking. And then everybody's resentful, and then it's bad.
And then it just goes down the drain, and it's hard to recover. No, I completely agree with you. And it's sad because it's like, who cares if you have to ask?
Yeah.
If you were a queen, you would have to ask a subject to go do something for you, and they would have to do it. So what's the difference? If anything, you're getting the queen treatment.
Yeah.
And it is, and we just have all of these influences in every movie of these people. I mean, I tell people all the time, my favorite Disney reference as to why our society does this is Ariel. Ariel didn't have a voice for a whole freaking movie. She could not even speak. And Prince Eric met all of her needs and figured out who she was and her whole backstory, and that there was this horrible person, and fell in love with her and knew all about her. And she did not have a voice the whole movie. Like, mind blowing. Like, we are priming kids to say, your true love is someone you need to mind read, or your parents are someone you need to mind read, just by these simple little like Disney movies. And they're not bad. I love Disney. They're cute. But if we're not having open conversations about, hey, this is a movie you actually have to tell someone in the real world, then it just is something that snowballs. But there's just so many prevalent examples of it in society that it's just snowballed so big that we're all doing it. And it really stinks. We are upset we do it. The partner's upset that they feel like they didn't meet our expectations, and I don't understand it. I mean, I do it, I am guilty of it, but I don't get it.
I'm blaming The Little Mermaid from now on. I used to love that movie.
Blame it.
I'm blaming that movie. That's my go-to now.
Right? It's crazy. I don't get it. It may, like, when you talk it out, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
It just doesn't. But I always give couples, these are some interventions, like when couples are coming in, building friendship and building, soft startups and better ways to manage conflict. That is naturally going to build romance. People think that romance is the second category. Friendship, you have to build that. You have to like each other before you want to touch each other. You have to not be fighting all the time and learn how to manage and work as a team before you want to touch each other. So as those things are starting to fall into place, this is one of those later phase goals that starts to become easier to accomplish because you've now learned the communication skills, can listen to each other, like each other, respond to each other, and work together in a good way to be able to even get here. But I always tell clients, a daily stress reducing conversation, you just ask each other, what is the most immediate stressor and what could I do to make you just a little bit less stressed? Doesn't have to like be something that actually helps solve a problem. It could be, oh, well, if you take care of dinner, if you do the dishes tonight, or if you rub my feet, or if you just give me a hug right now, that'll make me feel a little less stressed, whatever it is. But making that a daily routine, like right when you walk in the door, where are you? What's your most immediate stress? Are you super stressed today, or is this a low stress day? And if you are super stressed, what can I do? Okay, that's how we start. Hello, good evening, love you. I'm so happy you're home. Let's talk about what's stressing you right now and how we can immediately make that a little lower since you walked in the door, because this house, this relationship is your place of peace, babe. And then I would tell them a weekly state of the union, in quotes, conversation is maybe Sunday night before bed every night. You just say, hey, what did we do well together this week? Did we really, show our appreciation, say thank you a lot out loud? Did we really try to prioritize our couple time together? And we went on like 2 or 3 dates this week, or we had a lot of alone time, or maybe, it's something in between. But we always are trying to pick out like, hey, what did we work together on and accomplish this week as a couple? And what are some things that we could put more attention to? Not things we did bad, because that can be really defeating, especially when you're going to therapy and trying to work on things, but also not individual at this point in time. I always tell my clients, I'm the person who can help you navigate between each other, back and forth in sessions. So if you have something like that, write it in your notes, bring it to me, and I'll help you, especially in the early stages of therapy. Your weekly state of the union is, what do we need to bring more attention on next week? Or what can we do in addition next week together that we're both really wanting? Something that, incorporates the teamwork aspect of it. And then, of course, daily cuddle time, weekly date. I've done like people who have maybe just not had a lot of desire to be with each other. I've done choice menus, and some of them have been more romance choice menus, some of them sexual choice menus where, they get to pick arts or draw pictures or whatever they want of, I like when we dance in the kitchen when I'm cooking dinner as like a little appetizer, or maybe another type of appetizer is, I really, really love when you just turn me around and hug me whenever I'm putting the laundry away. Some things like that, and building up for every course. So that way, A, it's a fun little activity you guys get to do together and present to each other. But B, your partner literally has a menu of things that if they want to have sex with you that night, okay, well, they know that they should probably dance with you in the kitchen a little bit, and they should probably, give you a few kisses on the cheek and whatever
Yeah.
it is for that person. And it's just a fun little date idea, and then it turns into this thing that you can utilize in your relationship to make each other happy.
I like that because especially for women, because,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not the approach is so different,
Right.
for men and women, I've heard guys say, any sex is not bad sex, right? Like
Right.
but they don't need dancing in the kitchen first, but
Mm-hmm.
women, it's just so different,
It is. And that's biological. There are different chemicals and different
Right.
proportions of the same chemicals that are released during sex for both men and women. And so, and especially, of course, with some more modern day influences of pornography use and other media things that we take in on a daily basis, like those hormones, those chemicals, those influences, they all change the way that we make meaning about intimacy and romance. And sometimes, more stereotypically for men, romance and sex, that's two and two. So when a female partner is saying, I wish you were more romantic, to them that's like, oh, that's sex. Maybe I need to like kiss her ear once before, but then like we're good to go. But if we have like this whole menu, then we have all of these options, and all of the options are things that you wanted in the first place. So you can't go wrong.
Yeah.
And it's a fun assignment. I like being the therapist for that activity because they come back and they're so excited, but kind of a little like, no matter what age they are, they're a little like shy to tell me all of these things. And I've had
Oh.
some people get like a little pick art pictures of the Kama Sutra for their like dinner and dessert. And they've gotten a little graphic, a little explicit, but
Yeah.
and just so proud. They're like, honey, this, and the male partner will be like, okay, and we're
Yeah, they're like,
snuggling and
"Hey."
making and have these like little giggle feelings, and it feels like we're 16 years old again, and we're
Yeah.
experiencing with all that for the first time with each other, and we're bringing it back and having a little. We're a little embarrassed about it. I kind of almost don't want to share it with you. Like, do you think you can handle it? Type thing
Yeah.
going on, and that's how you bring in the romance. Is you continue to make a new experience with each other.
Yeah. I love that. I'm really picking out some of these particular things, like I love
Right?
that choice menu. That's so cute.
It's
I love
so fun. It is so fun. And sometimes they're like, I don't want to show you. And so they just like show each other. And I'm like, see, now
that.
you don't even need me. Like, I'll take a step back. You
Yeah.
can just do it yourself.
You should
And
have put
that's really powerful for
the
therapists
little
too.
notes. You should have them pass little notes like, "Are you willing to
Right?
try this with me?" Circle yes or no, you know?
Exactly. That's so funny. That's a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, it's like kids, that's what we used to do?
Absolutely. Trying to think of what else I've got on here. Oh, learning each other's love maps. That's different than love language. Love language, though, that book is more about how we express and receive love. Love maps is just being able to understand each other's inner worlds, what's going on, not only factual knowledge, but just their worldview, their perceptions, some of their previous experiences, and which I know that we're getting close to time, but the Gottman card deck apps, they have a card deck on there. You just click it that says for building love maps, and there's questions from where was your partner born and on what day to what are the immediate stresses in your partner's life. And those sound, I'm not even gonna joke, those sound super easy, and some of them they are, but me and my husband, we try to, at least at minimum once a week, but we try to do it
Yeah.
every single weeknight where we're doing some of those questions for 10 or 20 minutes while we're sitting in bed before we start watching our Netflix show. And we did it last night, and there was one on there. What was it that gave me trouble? And I was like, dang, I can't believe, like, oh, it was music. It was, what is your partner's favorite music artist, or what music have they been listening to a lot? And I'm like,
Mm.
wow, like I know that this isn't a big deal. I know that, I'm probably not going to get asked this by anybody else, but that's a basic question. Like, who's my partner's
Right.
favorite artist right now? And I didn't know that. I was like, I have no idea what you're listening to right now. I couldn't even pick it out.
Yeah.
And some of those things I had known at once, some of his old favorite artists, but I was like, wow, I'm really not in full understanding. And we're married. I'm a couples therapist. We're still young, and I'm already starting to lose some of that knowledge of his inner world and what's going on for him. And
Yeah.
obviously it's a quick fix. You just have a conversation about it and talk about it. But had we never brought those things into our relationship, it would just get further and further away from my thought processes. And then we stop being friends after enough things get further and further away.
Absolutely.
um and all of these other things are things that have, I think, already been said, of just it doesn't have to be the same. Romance can look different, and probably honestly should look a little different than the beginning of a relationship, because there's so much more involved. There's a million different types of romances. There is, we have our companionate romance of like, this person will be here for me if I get diagnosed with cancer. And that's kind of romantic in a way. There's a lustful type of romance, like this person will wine and dine me. There is a friend, a lighthearted, the Disney type of romance. There's this ton of them. And that's okay that some of them are leading the way for a little bit of a season in your life, and then we're balancing and redirecting energy when it gets too much and we need it in another place. And that's the key, is to just find the balance and trial and error. What works now, it's okay if it doesn't work in 2 months, 2 years, 20 years. We are not static individuals. We are constantly changing and evolving, and that is okay. That the way we have to schedule time to be romantic or build romance in our relationship change with us. And it should, honestly.
I think that's where part of the problem comes in, though, too, is that people, I guess they give themselves allowance to change, but we don't necessarily give that to our partner in a
Oh, all the
relationship.
time. I'm so
And
guilty of that.
yeah, and we don't give the relationship itself as a unit permission to change. Like,
Mm-hmm.
when change is really the only constant. So it's interesting.
Exactly.
And we all do it. We're all guilty of it.
Mhm.
It's just an interesting thing.
It is. And I think that applies to almost all facets of couple relationships. Like, I think this is something I'm personally really bad at, of not necessarily thinking that my spouse might be going through something and that's why they forgot to do something. I'm just like, why didn't you do this thing? And granted, like, I mean, even when I'm not feeling well or have overwhelmed with something else, or maybe I'm going through a season of depression, like, I know that will impact my life and all that kind of, I mean, it's not good stuff. I was about to say all that good stuff, but it's not good stuff.
Oh yeah, I
Um,
get
it's
what
bad stuff, all that bad juju. And it's really easy to want other people to respond well to you and show up for
yeah,
you. And yeah, granted, maybe I do get some stuff done in those seasons of life, but that doesn't mean that my partner can't have depression for a little bit. And maybe
yeah,
that makes it hard for him to show up in a certain way. And I think that we just are really, really good at giving ourselves some grace sometimes when we're in relationships, and painting the partner as this malicious person who's doing it on purpose and has all this awareness, when they might be just hurting.
yeah.
They might be hurting and it's not about you at all. And they don't even realize they're doing anything to you.
But that's that mind reading thing too, right? Like, if we're
Disney.
hurting, we just expect the other person to know we're hurting, so I need grace. Instead of taking that, when I read through the Gottman stuff and the weekly State of the Union thing, I was like, that's a great idea, but how many people do that? How
Not a
many
lot.
people, you just don't you don't, like you said, you don't schedule it in and make the time, because we have this misconception that it's just
Mhm.
supposed to be a bed of roses, and it's supposed to not take work if it's good, which is ridiculous.
It
Anything
is.
good, anything good takes work and practice and dedication. It's just,
Mhm.
as we talk about this, I'm just astounded at the dumb assumptions that we make when it
Yep.
comes to, I mean, it's
I'm guilty. I'm very, very guilty.
oh, me
I'll bring in my
too.
husband right now and he'll tell me or tell you guys how to.
No, no. No,
But
it's just
I totally
wild.
agree with you. And then people will come, and like you said earlier, like somebody who wants the romance like it was in that novel beginning part of the relationship, and then 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever, how many years in, they're like, well, it's just not there right now. Like that romance
Yeah,
is not there, and I just can't believe it. And I'm like, well, did you say that? Like, are you communicating and saying your needs as if you just met each other 2 weeks ago and you're dating each other again?
yeah,
No, you're not putting in that same exact amount of communication and trying to understand each other. What is this? Like, what is this person who's so great in front of me?
yeah,
You are in, what the hell is this? And you're
yeah,
and you're trying to get your needs met, but that's just not a great way to get your needs met, like it was at the beginning when you were trying to just learn everything about what this person is, what's going on with them, how they operate. We don't
yeah,
give people that same thing, and then we wonder why the romance is gone, because, well, we just expect them to know everything that's going on for
yeah.
us, and we expect to know everything about them, and we are wrong when we expect and mind read our partners all the time, all the
Yeah.
time.
And
And
like you
but we
said
don't check.
earlier, I think I can't remember exactly how you said it, but we were talking about how maybe we could sustain this romance like it is in the beginning if we, and I think the key to that is you show so much interest about the person in the beginning.
You're
And
like
like you
checking
said,
under their armpit, getting their measurements. Like,
yes,
damn.
I mean, I'm all, what movies do you like? What music do you like? What do you
Mhm,
not like? What are our commonalities? And I
mhm.
guess we think that we know everything when we don't. Like that Newlywed Game. Did you ever watch the classic Newlywed Game? You
Yeah.
know, it's interesting to find out what people don't know, you
Mhm.
know.
And even when
Anyway,
we think we know everything, like I thought I could confidently say my husband's favorite music last night,
yeah,
and I was
yeah,
asked, and I was like, I actually have no earthly idea what's going on with your music choices right
yeah.
now. And we're sharing a car right now, so you'd think I would know.
That's fine. But it seems like a little thing, but it's really not a little thing because well, if, like for me, that wouldn't be because music is a huge part of my life. And so I
Mhm.
feel like if somebody knows the music I like, they know me a little bit better because they
Mhm.
know anyway. So maybe that happened in your relationship, so you'd have this great example to use with your
Right?
couple, when you
And
when you
my
work with.
clients know it. I am the first person to say, "Oh, yeah, I'm really guilty of that, and I did that last Tuesday." And
Yeah,
that's all we can do. We are going to mess up so much in relationships.
I
I'm a
know.
couples therapist and have a master's, and I'm getting a PhD, and I'm constantly reading. I'm giving workshops and giving presentations, academic presentations, and I still am guilty of a lot of
Sure.
these things on a week to week, day to day basis. And the goal
Yeah.
is to not have an absence. The goal is to own it when it happens and just try to do something different or acknowledge it and not try to sweep it under like, oh, I didn't do that. What are you talking about?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, I
we're
think
human. We're chaotic.
that's the key is that, I've seen couples that have been together for so long and well, very few of them. And ultimately what they end up saying is they've learned a way to be together. It's never just easy. They're
Mhm.
lying to you if they say it's easy, but
Right?
they've learned a way to negotiate being with another person. And
Hmm.
as I'm sitting here thinking about it, this has been such a great webinar, by the way. Um,
Okay.
no, I'm just so astounded at the things that we assume
Hmm.
and why we act the way that we do.
I know.
It's
It's
amazing.
it's intriguing to me as well. It's why I do
Yeah,
what I do.
yeah, it's so intriguing. So,
Which
what
I
about
have
you?
like the rest of
Oh,
this PowerPoint is some of my favorite of these books. I love this Burn After Writing. It's something you can get at Target or Walmart. It's like $6 or $7, and it's almost like the adult version of Coke versus Pepsi that you can do with your partner.
yeah,
So that's really fun. Of course, the Gottman books, the Love Prescription, Seven Principles, the Milan and Kay Yurkovich book, How We Love. These are all super, super good. I recommend all of them of just how to manage stuff and how to have a real world relationship, but also how to be friends,
yeah.
because that's very, very important. And then some of these apps, the Gottman Card Deck app, that's the top little icon. There's thousands of questions to be able to like build your love maps and figure out how to ask each other things and even how to talk to each other about sex and intimacy and romance and passion.
Yeah.
And then there's this We Feel app, which I think it's like, and this is newer. I think I don't know. One of my clients and their partner use it. I've never even gotten on it or anything. But they say it's like they give them each little challenges to do throughout the day or week. I
Oh,
guess it's maybe variable, and makes it more of like a game than like a question game. I don't
yeah,
know.
that's neat.
Oop. And they love it, but I can't say that I have tried it and have a personal
Yeah,
opinion about it. And then all of these three podcasts on here, I've heard bits and pieces, if not like this couples therapist couch I listen to pretty frequently. But these other two I've heard bits and pieces and hear people, you know, say good things about them too. And these are all really great resources, but of course, like they only take you so far. Even those Gottman books, they only take you so far. Um, it's just so helpful. People underestimate what a third non-biased person, well, they obviously have some
oh
bias, but
man.
someone who
Well,
doesn't
it's
go
so
home with
hard.
you. you
It's
know?
so hard to be that neutral person, like you said earlier about the empathetic communication. I mean,
Mhm.
it's
It
so
is.
hard when you got a stake in the game, you know?
It
So,
totally is. And so, you might need some in-person help or online help. I of course love couples. Couples is my favorite work. I was trained at the Family Therapy Clinic at Texas Tech. It's on Tech's campus. We have our master's levels clinicians training there, and they are getting supervised in real time by two-way mirrors, and they operate on a sliding scale from $10 to $70.
awesome.
But really, any MFT, LPC, LCSW, and psychologists, they all see couples. If I had to give a little breakdown that was like 2 seconds long, I think they're all fabulous. MFTs definitely have all of their training broken into couple, family relationships. And even when they see individual clients, it's through the lens that we are in couple and family relationships. I
Yeah,
would say LPCs, they look through more of like that individual lens, the cause, the root of the problem, and how to solve it. LCSWs, they look at problems more in like the scope of society and societal problems. I don't think every single one, but that's just where their
sure.
training lens comes from. And then psychologists, of course, are much heavier in the medical model assessment diagnosis, but they
Yeah.
all get some type of training in relational aspects and in couples, and they're all human beings, which I think is the most important part about being a third person in the room, is that you are a
Yeah,
human breathing who's living and has flesh. So I think you can't go wrong with any of those options. You just know that none of them are going to be one size fits all. No therapist or counselor is, and that if you're not vibing with someone after the third session, I tell my clients this, come talk to me. I will tell you other people that I like in town, or I'll give you referrals or opinions about some other clinicians I think would work for you. And it won't hurt my feelings because it's unrealistic for me to say I'm going to work for every single person in this world to be a client, because
absolutely.
I'm
There's
just
a
who I am.
yeah, there's a connection that you want to be there, you know. Uh,
Hmm. Absolutely, it is.
this has been so great, and thank you so much for doing this series.
Absolutely, I've
I think
loved it.
yeah, it's been really really great. So if you know, in the future, just if you want to do something like this again, or just a one shot, if you have something that you want to,
Yeah,
you know, put out there,
absolutely.
just let me know, and hopefully
Yeah,
we'll hopefully get the whole series put on the website soon. So
beautiful. And if you ever have a need, if it's outside of couples and any special topics, of course, I have a repertoire of Texas Tech access to research. I'm happy to make a presentation about anything.
nice, nice. Well, thank you so much, Catherine. I really appreciate you taking the time to put all this together and do it, and I've loved it, enjoyed it.
Me too. It was
All right.
great getting to know you and giving all of these fun presentations.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, have a great weekend. We'll talk in the future.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Bye.